Welcome to today's interview on Decentralized.tv. I'm Mike Adams, and you may notice I'm not in my regular studio right now. And that's because we're doing this off hours with our special guest, who is involved in a project that I think is really important for people being able to acquire Monero, which of course is, I think, the #1 privacy coin, without going through centralized exchanges, which have all kinds of problems that even I've been experiencing lately as well. I've had my accounts frozen on a couple of exchanges for using them too much, it turns out. So imagine that. But joining me now to talk about localmonero.co, that's the website that you'll want to go check out, is Alex. And Alex, thank you for joining me here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Good to be here.
It's great to have you on. Now, I want to be respectful, first of all, that Monero is a privacy coin. We're going to respect your privacy. I don't even know really, who you are or where you are, but what are you able to share about your involvement with the project?
Well, my involvement with the Monero project specifically is rather limited.
No, I mean local, just the local Monero project.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, I'm the co-founder at LocalMonero Agrodesk. We've been operating since 2017. We've survived the big crypto crash, and we're
Yeah.
still chugging along. Initially, we launched just as LocalMonero, as a peer-to-peer platform to serve the Monero community, because back then there was no active peer-to-peer platform for Monero. So we kind of stepped in and filled that niche. It was like an alternative to local Bitcoins, which recently closed, unfortunately. Local
Oh,
Bitcoins being,
really?
of course, they're like the grandfather of the industry, essentially. They've started the whole format, I'd say. Well,
Uh-huh.
maybe they didn't start it, but they certainly sort of perfected it and made it mainstream. And yeah, Monero didn't have an equivalent to that, and so we stepped in and we filled that void. We also expanded our platform in 2019 to also serve the Bitcoin community by launching Agrodesk, which is essentially just an alternative front end for local Monero that also includes Bitcoin on the platform.
Okay. I didn't know that, but that's great to know. So, for those who aren't familiar with what local Monero is, or Agoradesk, as you're talking about, could you just give us kind of a simplified explanation, and break it down for newbies too, if you would, please.
So, okay, so when you want to buy cryptocurrencies, usually people tell you to go to what's called a centralized exchange, which is something like Kraken or Binance or something like that. And the way that it works is that you register an account there. They ask you for all of your ID information. They ask you for a passport scan or an ID scan. They ask you for like a selfie video or something like that. They ask you for an address proof. And you have to go through all these layers of what's called KYC, know your customer. And only after that do you get access to actually trade, uh, purchase or sell the cryptocurrency that you wish to purchase or sell. There is also an alternative to that, which is less popular, less known, but that's slowly changing now after the whole FTX scandal and people realizing how big of a problem KYC is, and that's called peer-to-peer, P2P. And the way that it works is that platforms like ours, where you don't really need to provide any ID information just to register on the platform, all you do is you go on the website, you go on localmonero.co, you register an account. It's as simple as getting a username and password. You don't even need to submit an email on our platform.
Okay.
Um, After that, you just there's a few people that are selling, let's say Monero. They post offers on the website, kind of like they do on eBay or Craigslist or something like that.
Right.
And you basically browse those offers. You can select any payment method you wish. And if there's a seller that offers that payment method, then you can just directly contact them through clicking the buy button on the website next to their offer. And you get a little chat window. The seller gives you their payment details. You know, let's say it's a Cash App trade, they'd give you their cash tag. You'd make the payment, and then they finalize the trade, and you get the coins directly to your wallet. And start to finish, this process takes, I'd say, about 20 minutes. It's very simple, very easy, very fast.
And there's, as I understand it, I mean, you have all kinds of security measures in place to protect the buyer and seller. I understand it's not perfect. We'll talk about that. But don't you have kind of protection mechanisms for buyers to be able to know that they can trust certain sellers who have a reputation on your platform?
That's right. We have a couple of mechanisms in place. One is the, as you mentioned, the reputation mechanism. Every seller has a score that shows how many trades they have and what percentage of positive feedbacks do they have, positive reviews. That's one sort of protection mechanism, because a seller wants to maintain their reputation, because, you know, if they start scamming or somehow mistreating their customers, then other customers will know about it and they won't get any more customers because of that. So that's one mechanism of protecting the buyer. The other mechanism is what we call the arbitration bond, meaning that the seller, when they post an offer and when you open a trade with them, they have to post a bond that is equal in amount to the amount of the trade. So if you're buying $100 worth of Monero on the platform, then the seller has to post a $100 equivalent bond in order for the trade to start. And that way, there's no way for the seller to sort of just get your money from, let's say, on Cash App, and then just disappear from the website, you know, without actually paying you the coins that they owe you. And the way that it works is that in case there's some kind of a dispute situation, let's say you make the payment, and then the seller starts saying, "Oh no, I didn't receive any payment." Well, then you can press the dispute button, and that opens a dispute. Our staff joins the trade. We examine the evidence on both sides, and then we make a ruling based on that. And because of this mechanism, you know, if you've actually made the payment, it's very easy to prove it, generally speaking.
Right.
And you know, if the seller hasn't received the payment, it's also, relatively speaking, easy to prove it for them. So, you know, we have ways of figuring it out. We don't make those ways public, because if we do, then that opens up sort of space
Yeah.
for scammers to try to game the system. But,
Right.
you know, we have our ways of figuring it out. And because of these mechanisms in place, there's basically no incentive, or rather no moral hazard in play for the seller to try to pull this off, because they know that they'll end up in a dispute situation, and they know that we're going to figure it out. Now, sometimes...
Can I wait? I'm sorry. Before you go on, can I ask what's then the revenue model for the platform? Is it just a percentage of every transaction, or how does that work?
Yeah, we take 1% from every completed trade. That's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
And it's only on the side that posted the offer. So if you're a buyer that's responding to someone else's sell offer, then there's no fee for you.
Okay.
It's just the seller.
And then I hope I'm not prying too much, but I would guess that your overhead involves, of course, maintaining the site, you know, all the data integrity and avoiding DDoS attacks and all that happens, but then also the dispute resolution team, right? Because I can imagine scammers are going to try everything at first on every website that they think they might be able to get away with something. I'm sure they've tried everything that is imaginable, but then they learn they can't do it, and then they go somewhere else. But it takes time of your staff to enforce your rule system, right?
That's exactly correct. Yeah, and scammers, you know, they every day there's a scammer that thinks that they can outsmart the system, that think that they can sort of defeat it. But
Yeah.
generally, no, it just doesn't happen. Yeah, we're a step ahead.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, I'm looking at your site right now, and I admit the first time I saw this category, it says buy Monero with cash in the USA. And apparently that's meeting people at a location. You bring cash and then they give you Monero, correct? And there's people all over the country that will meet you to do this trade, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Now, My first impression, now, maybe it's just because, I live in Texas, and I don't know, as a Texan, we don't necessarily trust meeting people in parking lots that we don't know to do exchanges and things, but do people tend to meet in like restaurants or public places or something? I mean, how is this typically handled in a safe and secure manner?
Yeah, generally these meetings happen in a public place where if there's something, if there's some funny business that somebody wants to attempt, it's going to have a lot of witnesses. So the kind of you're probably thinking of like robberies, armed robberies, stuff
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, like as long as you're in a public place, and as long as you sort of be careful about making sure that there's nobody tracing you, following you, then you should be fine. Yeah. And generally speaking, the face-to-face cash meetings, I mean, people do them, but generally people stick to online payment methods, stuff like Cash App, or maybe cash ATM cash deposits, or maybe cash by mail, or Zelle, or
Right. You also, I saw that, don't you have, yeah, you have PayPal, bank transfers, international wires, Cash App, Zelle, cash by mail. Do people mail cash to each other?
yeah, yeah, people
Yeah?
mail cash to each other. Yeah, that
Wow.
the big advantage of cash by mail is that it's sort of, you don't have to meet anyone,
Yeah.
and it's irreversible, so that protects the seller from scams that buyers can perpetrate on reversible payment methods like PayPal. This is like one of the
Good
main
point.
reasons that sellers get burned, is they accept a payment method that is reversible. So basically, for example, with PayPal will almost always side with the buyer.
Uh,
There's very little protection for the seller on a PayPal trade. And if you're a buyer, you can make the PayPal payment, and then you can claim that it was like fraud, or that it was an unauthorized payment or something like that.
right.
And then PayPal will reverse the payment, and then the seller will be left holding the bag, even if they can provide all the necessary receipts and evidence to PayPal in dispute resolution. They just always side with the buyer.
This gets to one of the key advantages of cryptocurrency, by the way, because the the payments are final. The record is immutable once, of course, once it passes a certain number of confirmations on the blockchain. But one of the things that I love about Monero in particular, but crypto in general, is that it doesn't have all that reversibility. Because even ACH bank transfers, I've learned recently, some people can reverse those. And of course, I run an online store, an e-commerce operation, and there's always some small percentage of people that try to do chargebacks after they receive the goods, basically stealing. We actually, we caught one person recently that had stolen about $20,000 worth of product from us that way. We caught them, and it was a younger kid, I'd say under 20, and local police visited him, and he sent it all back because he didn't want to get charged. Yeah, we actually got it all back. But yeah, I know that's the first time that's ever happened. But the reversibility of fiat banking and transfers and payments is a detriment to the integrity of the entire system, and it slows everything down because you never know, as a receiver or a sender, if you can trust the other party's actions in fiat.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that is why cash-based payment methods are generally more popular, because the
Interesting.
sellers don't carry that risk of being burned. One exception would probably be Cash App, where Cash App generally is irreversible. Like there have been instances of reversibility in Cash App, but it's very, very, very difficult for a buyer to reverse a Cash App payment.
I see. Oh, well, that's good to know because, see, even myself, I want to acquire more Monero, and the way I've been doing it is to buy Bitcoin first and then swap Bitcoin for Monero.
Well, then you're leaving a permanent record in the Bitcoin chain if you're doing that.
Yeah,
You should go
exactly.
directly to Monero.
Oh, well, that's what I want to do. that's why I'm talking to you. And a lot of people want to go directly to Monero. They don't want to have that, fully readable Bitcoin blockchain record, especially buying BTC from a KYC exchange, right? Which is the way most people get it. All right, so fascinating. So what about transaction sizes? Because, I see a lot of the offers on your site. To me, they don't necessarily look that large. What if somebody wants to take 20 grand and put it into Monero? It seems like that's going to raise a lot of red flags to a lot of sellers on LocalMonero. Perhaps. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Look, it depends on the seller. Different sellers do different volumes. So generally, if you want to make those kind of purchases, you would have to talk to the seller directly and arrange for that. Yeah. And some sellers will outright say no, and others might agree depending on the specific case. So you can always just open a trade. You don't have to commit to anything on the platform immediately. You can, as a buyer, just open a trade with a seller for, let's say, a minimum amount. You don't have to make any payment, actually. And then in the trade chat, you can ask the seller whether they can sort of accommodate you, and they'll respond generally really quickly. Yeah. And then you can cancel the trade, and there's no harm, no foul, no commitments, no nothing.
Okay, and then there's also a reputation score for you as a buyer. If you're just a buyer, never a seller, then you also have a reputation score as well. So it seems to make sense if you want to buy Monero, you should probably start small, build a good reputation score, have a solid reputation on the platform so that you're going to be more easily trusted by other sellers.
That's right. That's generally the case. It's a very sort of like free market type of situation where reputation is very important and honesty is rewarded, and of course dishonesty is punished.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let me ask you another big question. Of course, we have the SEC trying to crack down on the centralized exchanges like Coinbase and Binance. And a lot of us have been wondering, a lot of us just who support privacy, digital coins, digital money, digital stores of value. I love Monero because, I can memorize a seed phrase and I can have a wallet in my head basically, and it goes with me wherever I go. And it's a store of value that can't be physically taken from me, right? So lots of advantages. But it seems like unless this trend gets reversed in terms of government trying to destroy privacy crypto, like eventually they're going to try to shut down operations like LocalMonero. Has any of that, only what you're willing to talk about publicly, but is that a concern, or has any of that already happened, or do you think that they're never going to touch peer-to-peer listings like that because it doesn't represent a huge amount of money overall, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that it's realistic to not think of this as something that may happen. It's definitely a risk. It's definitely, especially in the US, there seems to be some sort of a concentrated effort to shut down cryptocurrency, at least recently. Maybe this trend will reverse. Maybe, some people have been speculating that this is just a way for the traditional finance players to sort of destroy the industry and then buy in at low prices. Yeah.
I think that's a viable theory.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it's difficult to say. I think it's clear that the cat's out of the bag. You can't really stop this. Even if you
so true.
Even if you ban this in the US, there's always other jurisdictions that are going to be more friendly to it. And this is, again, kind of, it's not really a free market situation, but it's a decentralized sort of competition, right? Where you have one jurisdiction doing this, other jurisdictions doing that, and generally the free market will favor the most efficient, right? The most profitable jurisdiction. And that, I believe, will be a jurisdiction that will be friendly to cryptocurrency. So even if the US specifically shuts down peer-to-peer or a platform like ours, there's still going to be other jurisdictions that we'll be able to operate in.
Well, and it would be, I think, from a macroeconomic point of view, it would be very unwise for the United States to reject crypto because it's so fluid and borderless, that the U.S. would miss out on the opportunity to be a hub of crypto innovation, which would create more economic abundance, right? So if you shut it down in the U.S., it just goes to other countries, and anybody can get a VPN and change their IP address to, whatever, Singapore or whatever, and they can do business via Singapore. So, it just seems so short-sighted. Like Senator Elizabeth Warren, waging a war on crypto. It's like, why not understand that just as the U.S. was the innovation pioneer in computing operating systems like Windows and Mac, iOS, why not let the U.S. be the innovation pioneer in crypto, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, to play the government's advocate here, the U.S. government's advocate, they do stand to lose a lot from this, because the U.S. dollar is like a huge weapon in the arsenal of the U.S. government that they can use to clobber everybody into submission.
Sure.
And of course, crypto is, let's say how it is. It's a direct threat to the monopoly of the U.S. dollar over the world economy, and
yeah.
The U.S. government doesn't want to see this monopoly go away. It's not a monopoly per se. But it's like the U.S. dollar is, I think, responsible for like 70% of the transactions in the world or something like that. So it's very important for nations around the world to stay connected to the Federal Reserve and the U.S. dollar. So the U.S. can really dictate a lot of things to other countries because of the U.S. dollar. So if they sort of allow crypto to take over and thrive, then they would be giving up that power. And you might think that it's short-sighted, and it probably is short-sighted. I would say, I would agree with you that despite the loss of this monopoly, this U.S. dollar weapon that they have, despite that loss, they would benefit also from the increased economic efficiency of having this global, decentralized, frictionless medium of exchange system.
Right.
But I would say that short-sighted governance is the norm, especially in the U.S.
Well, I agree with you, and I think a great example of that, and I think this was a game changer for the whole history of money, was a little over a year ago when, through the influence of the United States, the SWIFT system cut off Russia from accessing that transactional system, right? So our viewers are very sophisticated, by the way. They already know about this, but just in case anybody doesn't, the SWIFT system, really, it's a centralized ledger that allows nations and central banks and member banks of other countries to engage in clearing and transactions. But it's a ledger that requires permission from the SWIFT organization, which is heavily influenced by Western powers, such as the United States. It's not supposed to be influenced that way, but it has been. So they cut off Russia. And I think that instantly sent a message all around the world that said, wait a second, the dollar's not neutral anymore. It's not a neutral method of exchange or means of exchange. It is now a scoring system where permission is required to use it. And if the U.S. doesn't want to give you permission as a nation, they can cut you off from that system. Whereas Monero is permissionless, right? So anybody right now could theoretically send a Monero transaction to anybody in Russia or Ukraine or China or South America or anywhere, and there's no central ledger or controlling authority that can cut it off. So we almost have to thank SWIFT for demonstrating the advantages of Monero, don't we?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a Marxist, but in some ways, this sort of policy is sowing the seeds of its own destruction, right? So the system is basically operating in a way, and seems to be unable to operate in any other way, such that if it, I mean, not just the central bank in the US, the Federal Reserve, but also central banks in other countries, through their tendency to inflate their currency and impose various restrictions upon their citizens that just want to be able to save their money, that just want to be able to transact with each other in a voluntary free market system, you know, they inflate the currency, they make it more difficult, and that sort of naturally drives people to seek alternatives.
Yes.
So I don't see personally like the incentive structure for government actors is such that I don't think that they'll be able to turn away from this sort of tendency. So
Right.
because of that, instead of a soft landing where it's like a reform type of situation where we gradually realize that this isn't sustainable, this isn't very productive, we're just inflating and inflating and restricting, and we're sort of cutting off the oxygen from free market voluntary interactions. It feels to me that we're more destined for a hard landing where it's going to be a situation that every central bank ends up in a high inflation or even hyperinflation situation, and that drives people to switch to crypto, Monero hopefully specifically, but even if it goes to Bitcoin, I'd be relatively happy, because I mean we're already seeing this happen in a lot of countries in what's known as the global South, right? We look at Argentina, we look at Venezuela, we look at Nigeria, and these things are, I mean, a lot of crypto penetration. I think the most penetrated in terms of crypto adoption countries are those that are experiencing this hard landing that I just talked
Absolutely.
about.
Yeah.
And the US has a much higher sort of inflation capacity than those countries, right? Because most of people around the world use the US dollar to transact. The Federal Reserve can print way more money than any other central bank can without sort of ending up in this
You're
hyperinflationary situation.
you're right, but they are certainly testing the limits of how far they can print. Trillions at a time now, right? So, I mean, your point is absolutely correct. But my goodness, how many trillions can the system handle? I guess we're going to find out.
We'll
Yeah.
find out. Yeah, we'll find out. And some people are going to find out the hard way. Some people are going to sort of, take steps, precautionary measures, and slowly diversify their portfolio out of fiat currencies and into stuff like gold. Shout out to Peter Schiff, and cryptocurrencies, and especially hopefully more people realize that Monero is the way to go because of Bitcoin's huge flaws that I mean, I don't think that it's possible that those flaws are going to be rectified just from a political standpoint. Political in the sense of the Bitcoin developer community is very rigid in terms of the way that Bitcoin is, and they don't want to change it. And a lot of so-called Bitcoin maximalists, they completely reject the notion of implementing confidentiality into Bitcoin's protocol. And I believe that will be, in the end, that will be the downfall of Bitcoin. And it's a shame, really, because we could have, it's obviously easier because Bitcoin already has a lot of adoption now compared to Monero, especially.
Yeah.
So if the Bitcoin community, especially the core developer community, were more open to implementing the necessary confidentiality measures that Monero already has, it could have been a much easier transition. But now we sort of have to not only transition people from fiat to crypto, but we have to transition them from Bitcoin to Monero as well. So it's a long way.
Well, just to go down the rabbit hole a little bit on this, and this is just conjecture, and I welcome Bitcoin experts to come on and counter this if you wish, but I've heard allegations that Bitcoin was a creation of the three-letter agencies, designed so that they could move money around, and also they could keep tabs on everybody else moving money around. And if that's the case, I can't prove it. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you can correct me in the comments on this video, but if that's the case, then they would never want to offer privacy features for it because it's so effective at tracking people's transactions. And this also explains why the Treasury is at war with Monero. I think, isn't that reward still being offered for anybody who can break Monero's, privacy algorithms? I think, didn't the Treasury have a reward out there for that?
Yeah, I think that reward is still active, but
I think so.
it's unlikely that anyone credible will be able to claim it. And
Yeah.
there is actually a huge development happening in the Monero development community right now. I don't know if you're aware of exactly how Monero privacy works.
I'm more technical than the average user, yes, and I've been trying to learn more about Seraphis, by the way, and trying to keep up to speed on things. But I'm not, certainly don't. I'm no expert on it.
Well, for the listeners, just a brief sort of rundown. There's sort of three pillars of privacy in Monero. One is stealth addresses, which is something that allows Monero transactions to be unlinkable in terms of the receiving address. So for example, in Bitcoin, when you give somebody your address to receive some coins, that address is recorded onto the blockchain. And so anybody who knows your address can sort of type that into a block explorer, and then they can see all the transactions that went into that address and all the transactions that are going out of that address, right? So
yes,
stealth addresses sort of combat that by creating this sort of like one-time address that is generated every time that you receive a transaction. That way, there's no way just to look at the blockchain and figure out which address received what and sent what. So that's one pillar. And the other pillar is what's known as confidential transactions, where you hide the amount. And the way that it works, it's just basically like a sum. I'm not super crypto literate, but it's basically it calculates without revealing the actual amount of the transaction. Every transaction has to, the inputs and the outputs have to sum to zero. And there's a way to do this in a cryptographically obscure way that prevents people from being able to see what are the amounts of the transaction. Now in Bitcoin, of course, you can see all the input amounts and all the output amounts. So that's what confidential transactions are for. And then the last pillar is ring signatures, which prevents people from being able to link the outputs. So like which output is actually being spent in a transaction. And the way that it works in Monero right now is that there's a ring of 16, meaning that every output that you spend, it's like a 16 ring where you don't know which of the members of the ring are the true is the true output that's being spent. Right now, in Seraphis right now, like this is breaking news.
Really,
this is happening. Yeah, literally in the last few days, we've had Luke Parker, also known as Kaya Benerv, releasing his work on what's called full chain membership proofs. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of Monero is the ring signatures, the rings of 16, basically saying that, oh well, you're not really, it's sort of using different statistical methods, you can try and figure out which output is actually the true spend of a transaction. And if only Monero had full chain membership proofs, meaning if only the anonymity set, if only the ring size was not 16 but included the entire blockchain, well, then you could talk about then you could talk about significant privacy. And now it seems that with Seraphis, this is going to happen, thanks to something called thanks to something known as curve trees, which is what Luke Parker is working on. it seems that, assuming Luke's work is solid, it seems that with Seraphis, we're going to get an upgrade that will increase the ring size. Well, I mean, rings won't exist anymore, but I'm just using it as an analogy. We're increasing the ring size from 16 to include all the outputs in the chain. So that's going to completely nullify the main criticism that Monero currently gets from people attacking its privacy.
Oh, wait a minute. And I'm guessing this is actually going to make the future blockchain more compact because it doesn't have to be padded with 15 other sort of stealth addresses either. There must be something more clever taking place.
Not exactly, not exactly. The transaction size actually will increase as far as we understand, because the proof needs to include, cryptographic signatures. I'm butchering the cryptography here. I apologize
It's okay.
to all the Monero cryptographers here, but just as a massive simplification that is probably even not completely accurate, we still have to sort of hold the signatures for all the outputs, but it's going to be like very compact. Now, the transaction inputs currently are 670 bytes per input, per ring, meaning. And it's going to go from 670 bytes up to, I think, around 2 to 4 kilobytes. So the transaction size is going to increase.
I see.
But the privacy benefits outweigh by far.
Clearly. So this has been the main criticism, or one of the criticisms of Monero also. I've actually voiced this too. The blockchain size is very large for the number of transactions that it carries. And it does take a long time, to sync the blockchain, given that it's not used as much as Bitcoin by far. But I'm with you. If it gives me far more privacy, I mean, you're talking about not just a geometric increase, but every transaction, every UTXO on the blockchain could be incorporated into the possibility of who owns this transaction. Then yeah, I'm willing to have a bigger blockchain for that kind of security. That makes sense.
It's not just every UTXO. UTXO meaning unspent transaction output. It actually includes all the outputs on the chain.
Wow. So then that's going to make the treasury go totally nuts. They'll have to raise the reward to millions of dollars, and it probably still won't work. I mean, unless they build a quantum decryption machine, which has I've seen some papers on that. Not really practical for this application at this point in time. Maybe 50 years later, who knows? But until that day, Monero's got some really smart people on the project. I keep hearing that from other projects, by the way, that the best coders are on Monero's cryptography.
That's right. All the sort of cypherpunks that used to be at the heart of Bitcoin. I mean, not all of them, of course, but I feel like most of them have now switched to Monero, and Monero has really sort of inherited the cypherpunk spirit that originally was in the Bitcoin project. Now the Bitcoin, I'm not saying that there are no cypherpunks in the Bitcoin project. I'm just saying that unfortunately, the real cutting edge privacy work is now being done on Monero and has sort of been abandoned in Bitcoin. And that's, like, the thing is, you can't have fungibility without privacy. It's not just about protecting.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about protecting everybody's financial privacy. It's also about making the next generation of money. And every time humanity has adopted a new medium of exchange, it has always had the fundamental property of fungibility. Fungibility meaning, one unit of this thing is equal to every other unit of that thing. If Peter Schiff were on the show, he'd mention that gold has fungibility and Bitcoin doesn't have fungibility.
That's right.
And
correct.
he'd be right.
Yeah.
And he's correct. He is correct. Bitcoin does not have fungibility because not every Bitcoin is equal to every other Bitcoin, because Some Bitcoins have a history to them, and other Bitcoins are freshly mined. And if a Bitcoin doesn't have any history associated with it, then you're not running the risk that at some time in the future some agency might declare the coins that you hold to be in some way undesirable. Maybe they were involved in a criminal transaction, maybe they were involved in terrorism, something like that. And then, of course, you had no idea when you were buying those Bitcoins that they had this history. In fact, nobody had any idea. It was only later when the investigation came through. And now you're holding the bag with coins that nobody's ever going to accept, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
But it's so funny
there's a lot
because
of implications. Yeah,
there are traces of cocaine on every dollar bill in circulation, right? So at some point, almost every physical greenback bill has been used by somebody to snort cocaine somewhere, probably, or at least has been used in a cocaine trade. So, if the same standard were used against fiat currency, paper bills, then, no one would be able to accept any paper bills without running a cocaine test, right? But of course, they don't do that. But for Bitcoin, they want to know the whole history. Like, where did this fraction come from? And how was it used in the past? The double standard is painful. But Monero, every coin is like a freshly minted coin because it has no history.
exactly. Even if you wanted to impose this standard, like I agree with your point on the double standard. But the thing is, even if you wanted to impose that standard on Monero, that would be impossible because, as you say, every coin that you receive is as if it was freshly minted. There is no history that you can deduce. Assuming all the cryptography is solid, there's no
Right.
history that you can deduce from any particular Monero coin. And even if you're not worried about that specific aspect of it, just financial privacy in general is something that everybody intuitively does. Nobody publishes their bank account information for everybody to see. People sort of intuitively understand that financial privacy is important, but there's also a lot of sort of implications from having a medium of exchange that is globally used that is completely traceable, like Bitcoin. Like one
Yeah.
example would be, let's say the whole, like, imagine a thought experiment. We have the whole world switching to Bitcoin as the new medium of exchange, the new gold standard of the world. What are some of the implications? One of the implications would be if somebody, let's say, has some sort of business, and they need to buy their supplies and they have their customers. If you have a competitor that you're negotiating, or sorry, not a competitor but a supplier, that you want to negotiate some supplies, purchase some supplies from, well, they can look at your Bitcoin wallet and they can see, what you paid to other suppliers.
That's right.
They can see how much money you earn, what your expenses are. And based on that, they can sort of adjust their price in a way that would make you pay the most amount of money possible, right? That gives
Mm-hmm.
them sort of like an unfair negotiating advantage. Normally, this would be a trade secret, right? Now, not this is applicable not only to a business but also to a consumer. Let's say you're a
Right.
consumer that's using a website like Amazon, and you wanna buy something. Well, if Amazon knows your Bitcoin wallet, because you've used it to purchase stuff from Amazon before, if they know your purchasing habits, how much you're spending here, how much you're earning, because they can see the receipts to your wallet, right? They can adjust the prices of their products to maximize their own profits, right? I think this is called discriminatory pricing, and this would
Yes.
happen completely transparently. This would happen without you knowing it.
And this is used right now by airline companies, by the way, right? Ticket prices are very different based on the geolocation of your IP address, where you're checking the prices from.
Yeah, this sort of turns it up to 11, right? And then, because you can do it individually per consumer. And
Yeah.
then in addition to that, it's just a safety risk, because let's say you're going to a region that's not very, that has a relatively high rate of crime, and you want to go to a convenience store and buy yourself a bottle of water. Well, you use your Bitcoin wallet to pay, and let's say you have way more than the national average in that country, right? The cashier will tip off some thugs that
The
are around
kidnap
the
and ransom
corner.
group, yeah, KNR.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And just like that, you're now a target in a very unsafe environment. So like Monero solves all of these. Of course, we've talked about the illicit funds problem, where you might just be selling cupcakes and you accept Bitcoin as payment, and then somebody buys some cupcakes from you, and then a couple of months later you get a notice from the FBI that you're now a target of investigation, because the coins that somebody used to pay you were used in some very, very bad activities, right? So
Right,
Monero
right.
solves all of these problems without any additional input from the end user. It just happens automatically. There's no way to mess this up, right? And
And
this
you're
should be the way.
you're answering a key point here. Sorry to interrupt, but when people say, "Oh, I don't need privacy coins because I'm not doing anything illegal," you just answered that. It doesn't have to be that you're doing anything illegal. You just gave several examples of where privacy is integral to your own personal safety and your ability to run a business, your ability to function in a world without having to create, 500 new Bitcoin addresses or use Whirlpool, CoinJoin, whatever, to try to swirl them all around, which makes the whole Bitcoin blockchain even bigger if everybody does that, right? So, you know, privacy is the answer to this. And I forgot who said it, but Monero is what a lot of people thought they bought when they bought Bitcoin. And then they realized Bitcoin doesn't have the privacy that Monero has. Monero actually fulfills the promise in many ways of the original vision of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The notion around Bitcoin was that it's fundamentally private and anonymous, and that's what people actually thought. And yeah, that's not the case. Most people still don't realize this, and I'm very happy to see that more and more people are starting to see this problem, even within the Bitcoin community. But we still have a long way to go before this becomes sort of a mass understood concept.
Yes,
And
true.
the, I mean, to me, I'm not a Monero maximalist. Um, I'm just someone who believes that it is crucial that humanity moves to the next generation of money. And so far, it seems that Monero is the best candidate at being the next generation of money. Now, if some new cryptocurrency project comes along that fulfills the holy trinity of decentralization, fungibility, and money being electronic, and it does it better than Monero. Maybe the blockchain size is smaller, or the privacy guarantees are better, or whatever it is. If that project comes along, I'll immediately launch that local new project .co,
Yeah.
and I'll be advocating for it. It's this is just a counterpoint to Bitcoin maxis, because Bitcoin maxis, like, I get why they're Bitcoin maxis, because there's been so many scams in the crypto space with the ICO era, with all the
Yeah.
NFTs. I mean, not all of them, but you know what I mean. The rug pulls, the scams. So it's understandable why you would want to sort of just shave off the remaining crypto industry and just be a Bitcoin maxi, but they really need to sort of modify their position a little bit from being a Bitcoin maxi to being a next generation of money maxi, and that will naturally drive them towards Monero.
Yeah, really good point, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I share your position. I recognize Monero right now as the number one privacy coin in terms of volume and ease of swappability, on ramps, off ramps, real world utility. You can use Monero in more places to buy more things than any other privacy coin. But all of that could change over the next few years. And if it does, I'm going to advocate for whatever has the best utility and what people are using. And I'm sure, whatever happens though, I'm sure Monero will have a major role. And again, from what I'm hearing, Monero actually has, I think, the most R&D talent right now of any privacy project that I'm aware of. And the super smart people, an outstanding community and so on. So I think the future for Monero is very bright.
I also feel that way. So far, the Monero community and the developer community has only been getting better over the years, and we're constantly getting new talent. We're constantly getting the best cryptographers looking at the code and figuring out ways to improve upon it. Yeah, I mean, so far the future looks bright. But as you said, if this changes, then immediately I will also shift with that change.
Yep. All right, now in terms of just wrapping this up, I want to be respectful of your time, and thank you for sharing so much time with us. But back to your website, localmonero.co. Just want to remind people, go check it out. I'm going to do the same. I'm not yet a user of your site, but I plan to be after this interview. By the way, the first time I ever used Monero was to purchase VPN services. So that's, don't want to say, but it's one that doesn't log files, and it's one that accepts Monero, so very privacy oriented. And I was just like, hey, if I'm going to buy a VPN, why would I use a credit card? It makes no sense to have my identity tied to this VPN that logs all these files. I see all these people all over the internet, YouTubers that have popular shows, and they're sponsored by VPN companies that keep all the log files of everybody. Right? And I'm thinking, how do you not know that you're promoting a spy machine? But then again, whatever. Not everybody understands the tech of what's actually going on. So anyway, I use Monero to buy VPN. And that was my intro to Monero. And from there, it was like, wow, this is what I want to use to spend. To like Bitcoin, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you still okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep this short. But, Bitcoin, because it's kind of slow and expensive to get in and out, but it's ideal for a lot of institutional investors moving much larger amounts because it has much larger liquidity. But in terms of my personal use, if I'm spending money, if I'm buying something, groceries or seeds at a farmer's market or whatever, I want to use Monero, not Bitcoin. Although I might use Bitcoin to get into Monero, or I might have, some store of value held in Bitcoin in some retirement account somewhere, probably with self-custody though, because I prefer that. But I would use Monero day to day. That's my take on it.
Well, I mean, even if you talk about store of value, like the point I mentioned earlier, like let's say, you're doing a DCA into Bitcoin, and you're building up your retirement account. Now imagine let's say you're 75 years old, you're drawing from that retirement account, and then some 3-letter agency puts you puts your entire wallet in a list of illicit activity, because somewhere in the past 10 years ago it turns out that Bitcoin was used somewhere. How is that a store of value? It's just like
True.
a ticking time bomb.
100%.
So
you're
even
right.
for a store of value, you should be using Monero. And you say, well, why would I be using a credit card to buy a VPN? Why would you be using a credit card to buy anything? You should be using
Exactly.
Monero as often as possible, as everywhere. And the more we do this, the faster we move to a freer, more safer, more prosperous world. I fully believe that, just like the Second Amendment protects us against government encroachment in terms of the ability to resist excessive tyranny, the next generation of money should be the financial equivalent of a Second Amendment. It should be able to protect us from financial tyranny, from hyperinflation, from
Absolutely.
restrictions. Yeah.
Oh, I think there's a day coming as the dollar collapse accelerates that we're going to see, and this is just my prediction, but don't take this as financial advice, folks. But I think a day is coming when there will be a rush into privacy coins because the dollar's collapse will accelerate due to money printing, and then any kind of government crackdown on usage of crypto will automatically target the chains that are not private because it's so much easier to have your money confiscated or tracked, or to receive notices from the IRS. Oh, we found out you did 57 transactions out of this wallet ID, and it's tied to your KYC, your social security number on Coinbase or whatever. That's easy for them to track. They have all that data. But with Monero, they don't. And
in addition, sorry for interrupting, but in addition to legitimate history tracking, meaning that they are correct that in fact there is a history that leads to you that is nefarious, even if you yourself haven't participated in it. There have also been many cases where these chain surveillance companies report to the police incidents of somebody being somehow involved in this chain when they actually were not involved in this chain.
Really?
And the KYC information being not actually matching, and then that person being prosecuted and then perhaps facing tens of years in jail. So
Wow.
we're not just talking about risks that are associated with actually being part of the chain, even if you haven't participated in the actual nefarious activity, you just received the coins. We're also talking about the risk of not even being involved in any of this at all and still being prosecuted
Wow.
because of the nature of the coin itself. So that's the main problem.
See, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right, because a lot of these, the so-called leads that can come out of a company like Chainalysis are based on a statistical analysis. So they could give a statistical certainty that this transaction might be involved in this, but maybe it's 70%. But they're wrong, right? And maybe the police say, well, 70%, we think you're guilty. It kind of reminds me of geofencing warrants where, if you don't have a de-Googled phone and you're running around with your cell phone and somebody commits a crime, 100 meters away, and you happen to be nearby, you can be swept up in a geofencing warrant just because you were there and you had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Wow.
So fundamentally, having fungible, private, decentralized electronic money protects you against all of that, leads you to free market prosperity in a way that no other currency can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's only pros. There's essentially no cons. I mean, the only con, I guess, is that you actually have to take the time to learn about it and understand self-custody and understand that you are responsible for your own financial, safety, that you can
Right.
never reveal your seed to anyone, that you have to maintain the security of your devices and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
apart from that, yeah, I mean, we all stand to benefit from this.
Well, the Monero wallet is one of the best I've ever used of any project. It's really easy. It even has mining built into the wallet. Once the chain is synced, you can just start mining if you want. Getmonero.org, I think, is the website where people can download the wallet. And then, of course, our guest today, folks, is Alex from LocalMonero.co. If you want to find creative local ways to acquire Monero. And Alex, number one, I want to thank you for your time. I'm sorry I held you a little bit over. And can you please hang
I'm
on?
happy to talk about this.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I want to ask you a question that's not perhaps appropriate for the interview, but just after the interview, if you don't mind, hang on. But I just want to thank you. Really appreciate you, and you're welcome back on here anytime.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike. And anytime you'll have me, I'll be happy to come on.
Okay, outstanding. And I guess I should probably just mention a disclaimer. Everybody, if you use localmonero.co, understand it's kind of like a listing service. It's kind of like a Craigslist or an eBay. So make sure you use those trust ratings, the reputation ratings, and what did you call it? A bond? What was
Arbitration bond.
Arbitration bond.
And,
yeah.
And a buyer make sure, if you're a buyer, never to cancel a trade if you've already made the payment, because that
right.
that takes away your. I mean, there have been instances of scammers posing as sellers, telling the buyer, oh, no, 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 you made the payment, but you need to cancel the trade and open a new one because I need to reset something, blah, blah, blah. Never
Oh,
cancel a trade if you've made the payment.
okay.
And make sure that, if you're a seller, never finalize a trade unless you have the money firmly in your hands, right?
Makes
Those are the
sense.
two main things. As long as
Okay.
you're, you never forfeit the protection that the website gives you, unless you're absolutely sure that you're safe. And don't trade outside of the platform. There are nefarious people that will try to talk to you on Telegram and say, hey, let's do it outside the platform, don't worry about
Ah,
it. I'm a high reputation seller, everything's going to be fine. There's
right.
often impersonators. There are people that pretend to be high reputation sellers on the platform. They use the
Wow.
same username in Telegram, and they pretend to be that person. Yeah, like, stay on the platform. If you're a buyer, never cancel if you've paid. If you're a seller, never finalize a trade unless you've firmly received the payment, and you should be fine.
Good advice. Yeah, and above all, folks, remember it's your responsibility now. You can't call customer service and say, "Oh, give me my money back. Somebody took it." It doesn't work that way. This is this is blockchain technology, and when it's done, it's done. It's immutable. So thank you so much, Alex. You greatly appreciate it. I appreciate your project. I'm going to learn more about it myself. And again, the website, folks, is localmonero.co to find listings of buyers and sellers and perhaps participate yourself. So thank you all for watching. I'm Mike Adams here with Decentralized.tv, and then my co-host, Todd Pittner, will be joining me next for his reaction to this interview. So that should be a fun discussion as well. Thank you for watching today. Take care. Join the official discussion channel for this show on Telegram at t.me/decentralizedtv, where you can ask questions or offer suggestions of who we should interview next. Also be sure to subscribe to the email newsletter on decentralized.tv, where you'll be alerted about 1 day in advance of each new upcoming episode, before it gets published. On decentralized.tv, you'll also find links to our video channels and social media channels across all platforms, including Brighteon, Rumble, BitChute, Twitter, Truth Social, and more. Check it all out at decentralized.tv. All right, welcome back. Now, in this segment, we're joined by my co-host, Todd Pittner. Welcome, Todd. Great to have you back on.
Great to be back on. Thank you, Mike. It's a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had a chance to review that interview with Alex there from LocalMonero, and now we get to react to it. So tell me, what did you think about it?
First of all, my impressions of Alex were, as I was listening, I'm like, this guy's really, really bright. You know how there are some people that just, they're pretty smart and whatnot, but they just come across as pat answers or whatever. But he was really, really contemplative
Yeah.
about certain things. And I loved how he presented things, and really, really got me more interested than ever in Monero, because I think there are a lot of smart folks like him that are over there. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I have my notes. I took copious notes, so everybody please forgive me if I have my head down, but I don't want to miss anything. But Mike, why don't you just take the lead here?
Okay. All right. Well, since interviewing him, which there's a time gap between what we're doing now and when I interviewed him, because of your deep sea fishing trip, by the way. Congratulations. We're glad you're back.
Thank you.
But during that time, I took it upon myself to really use LocalMonero. And I found some interesting things. And also during that time, I was banned by the Kraken exchange for some mysterious reason.
Crazy.
I had opened an account on Kraken, and I had transferred in just $1,000, which is not that much in the world of crypto, just to kind of see if it worked. And they, before they allowed me to make a single trade, they closed my account and they sent me a message. I shared it with you. They're like, we can't tell you why for security reasons, but we had to close your account. I'm like, I haven't even bought anything. What could possibly have gone wrong at this point? All I did was send you money.
I immediately knew the answer. The truth is, we're canceling your account because you're Mike Adams.
Yeah, well, see, there's a theory that is it, that maybe I'm on some kind of a blacklist of financial institutions, which probably is the case. But here's what's interesting. I have an account with JP Morgan, and they haven't canceled me. So here's a case where a centralized crypto exchange, Kraken, treats me worse than a globalist bank used by Jeffrey Epstein to launder money for blackmailing world leaders. So, I mean, think about it.
Now, didn't Gemini also can you?
Gemini has frozen my account, right? So Gemini froze it, and they sent me a message that says, we're freezing your account because essentially you've used it too much. And I'm like, you people suck. Gemini, Coinbase, a few years ago, Coinbase froze my account, and now Kraken froze my account. So this actually brings us to the point of why LocalMonero makes so much sense. And the original vision of Bitcoin even was, decentralized peer-to-peer money. Get rid of these central control grids, all the gatekeepers, and where you have to ask for permission. Please allow me to trade. Screw you. Peer-to-peer money is supposed to bypass all that.
Yes.
And that's what LocalMonero actually is. It's a peer-to-peer money trading platform. And it's also associated with agoradesk.com, where people buy and sell Bitcoin in the same manner. With that said, I decided to go ahead and start using LocalMonero. And, I got to say, it's tricky. I want to see a lot more people selling. And I came to find out the core problem or obstacle is that you're trying to, in my case, I'm trying to buy Monero with fiat currency, right? So there's lots of different methods that you can use to buy, to send people money. You can send them on Zelle or Zoom, or you can wire transfer. You can mail cash in the mail, which I have not done. There's all kinds of ways. But most of those ways, or you can charge a debit card or a credit card, whatever. Most of those ways are reversible.
Right.
So the fiat currency world is all reversible. So the people selling Monero on LocalMonero, when they send you Monero, that's not reversible.
Right.
And so the sellers keep getting
scammed.
They get scammed by buyers again and again and again, where the buyers, they wire money and then they reverse the wire, or they send money and then they claim it's fraud and they get the money back, and then the seller gets screwed. So what I found on LocalMonero is that all the sellers are pretty hyper, paranoid. They're like,
I would be.
They are. I mean, it's like they do their own KYC basically. Yeah. So if you want to buy Monero from them, in many cases, you got to send them your ID. You got to do a selfie.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. So even decentralized requires KYC in many cases.
Because fiat is reversible.
Because fiat is reversible. Now, but there's something else that's really cool. And you can interrupt me anytime. I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking, but
no, please do.
If you send cash in the mail, that's not reversible. Cash in the mail, the sellers, they don't need your KYC. They just need your mail to show up with the cash in it, and then they'll send you your Monero, right? So that's not reversible. So that's easy, and the rates are better. And the other thing is cryptocurrency trades on LocalMonero. So there are a lot of sellers there, and I've done a couple of these trades myself, where you send them Bitcoin and they send you Monero. So it's a swap. It's just like a swap service.
But who goes first? I presume the buyer goes first. You look at their trust score and you're like, okay, they've done 5,000 transactions and they got 5-star review. No,
this is what's cool. This is what's cool. What Alex has set up on LocalMonero, it goes like this. So first, I'm a buyer. Let's say, Todd, you're selling Monero.
Okay.
And I'm the buyer, you're the seller, okay?
Yep.
And I want to send you Bitcoin and you're going to send me Monero. So how do we trust each other? Here's how it works. You post a listing that you're going to sell some Monero.
Okay.
I click on your listing and I say, I want to buy $1,000 worth of Monero. you then have to accept my acceptance or my amount. Like I want to buy $1,000. You have to click accept.
Okay.
When you click accept, then you have to deposit $1,000 of Bitcoin into a security bond run by the platform.
Okay.
So you got to post $1,000 of Bitcoin.
You
do
seller,
as the seller.
But what if all I have is Monero? Because you're wanting to buy Monero.
You got to have Bitcoin. I think that's how it works. You got to have Bitcoin.
Oh.
All right. So you post $1,000 of Bitcoin with the platform, and then the platform monitors the blockchain and monitors the confirmations and everything, and then that's deposited. Then I, as the buyer, I send Bitcoin to the seller's wallet, to your wallet. All right. And then I click and I say, I've sent it. I affirm that I have sent it, right?
Okay.
Then you as the seller, you can just hang out and wait for the Bitcoin to show up in your wallet.
Okay.
Like you got it. It's done. Then you release the Monero to me, to my wallet.
Okay.
And then you click and you affirm that you sent me the Monero. And then I check my wallet and I see the Monero is there. I confirm that that's the case. And then, I say, thank you. But if I never get the Monero, I can challenge the transaction, and that security bond that you posted in Bitcoin can be held up until there's a decision made about who has committed the fraud.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. So, but if you click that you received it, all's good, then it auto releases the bond.
Right. Then the bond is released back to the seller.
Okay.
So here's what I found out, that it's actually not the buyers that are getting screwed most of the time in this deal. It's the sellers that are getting screwed. It's unscrupulous buyers that are sending money and then taking it back after they get the crypto.
Man, going into it, I would have totally had that flipped. I would have thought the other, right?
Yeah, totally.
But this brings up a good point for everyone watching. Please, please, please understand that in crypto, scammers are just at a next level.
They are. Yeah.
They know it all. I mean, literally, never click on a link that is direct message to you by somebody, even if it was me, because I guarantee it's not me. But they're so good at being imposters of others, and they will end up making you feel like it's safe to be able to restore your wallet. Just click on this link. It'll all happen privately, and
and enter your seed phrase over here.
Yeah. And then boom, you are your own bank.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
So you can't do it. You got to be so hyper vigilant.
Oh man. And I want to talk about hardware wallets at some point too. Maybe not today, but I tested 2 different brands, but 4 hardware wallets. And I have some fascinating conclusions about that. I couldn't get Monero to work on any of them, by the way.
Yeah. Right.
So that's something to consider. But anyway, so local
you know
Monero.
What? You just saying that. I mean, I'm an Epic fanboy, and so, but we have our own issues, right? Aren't we finding that I don't care what the private money is, what the private crypto is, they all have their own issues. This is not an easy game, this private crypto.
No, it is not.
But it is very, very important. So this is where we muscle through it. And just like with a food forest, if you never plant it, if you never get involved, you're never going to be able to eat the food.
Yeah.
And so, this is kind of like just being a private crypto prepper. You got to go through some make ready here.
Yeah. And let me add to that, because what I really learned from Alex in the interview here that just shocked my world was just how dangerous it is to actually buy Bitcoin from a KYC exchange.
Unpack that.
Well, because you've left a trace of your identity on that Bitcoin, and wherever it goes after you, like you could be prosecuted even for never having committed any crime, you could be prosecuted for something that somebody else did with the Bitcoin, you know, like maybe 2 hops earlier or 2 hops later. And you could
Wow.
be, there can be a warrant, you know, to take your computer, you know, to scan your transactions, to take your wallet, to confiscate things from you, just because you were in the middle of some other use of the Bitcoin.
So you are liable for that coin's history potentially.
Well, exactly. And what Alex was saying is that people have been prosecuted, and some people have gone to jail because at one point they temporarily held some Bitcoin that either in the past or in the future was involved in some kind of a serious crime.
That just doesn't seem right.
But you understand that that's, I mean, I know you know this because you're talking about this for years, but the Bitcoin blockchain, you know, tracks everything.
Chain.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything.
So I'm even like, okay, I've been buying Bitcoin so that I could swap it for privacy coins. Because you can't go to an exchange and buy Monero even, or Epic, or any privacy coin. You can't buy any privacy coin on any exchange, like a KYC exchange. And Binance just dropped all the privacy coins not long ago too. So you have to buy, you know, Bitcoin and then swap it. But then boom, that Bitcoin is tied to your identity forever because the blockchain is forever. So 10 years down the road, they can come back and they can track your social security number to that Bitcoin purchase. And then what happened after?
I mean, that just, frankly, it hurts my brain.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah. But I don't know how much, well, it came from Alex. So I was going to say, if that was mainstream narrative, it would sound to me like they're just trying to scare us with some FUD, you know, just to get us to pick up our ball and go home and say, oh, well, maybe crypto's not for me. But
well, I think, Todd, when we're going to have some guests on that are part of the Bitcoin universe.
Yeah.
And we should ask them this question about privacy and what they're doing to protect privacy in Bitcoin. So the other thing with LocalMonero is that, of course, because there's risk on the fiat side. See, you know, Todd, you've heard me say that the fiat currency banking system is broken.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it is a mess. Like there's no finality to anything. You know, you send money, like, for example, even if you deposit money with an exchange, they can hold your money for 10 days. You know why?
Correct.
Because you can reverse it. And so where there's reversibility, it slows everything down because no transaction is final. So, you know, think about this on the blockchain, right? If you send somebody Bitcoin and then it gets confirmed and confirmed and confirmed, and you can say, well, how many confirmations does it take for you to accept it as done? You know, some people would say 5 confirmations. Okay, well, however long that takes, you know, 30 minutes or whatever. What's the block time on Bitcoin? Do you know? Is it like 5 minutes or something? 10 minutes?
It depends on the day.
Okay, all right.
Time of day.
Okay, well, whatever it is, let's say 30 minutes later, it's done. That's, I mean, that's done. In a bank, it could be 10 days before it's done.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So the bank, like if you ACH bank money over to an exchange like Kraken, who will close your account, by the way, they will sit on it for days, which is kind of like waiting for confirmations. They're waiting for that to not be reversed, basically. So how are you supposed to conduct commerce in a system that's always reversible? How can you ever trust any transaction in the fiat banking system? Because none of them are permanent. Not even wires.
Did you, you didn't know, but I was going to say, did you know that I transferred money from one of my personal accounts to another personal account because I wanted to pay out of this other one, and they held it. They held it for 24 hours. I'm like, what the, you know?
Right. No, I've seen banks hold,
me.
They've held cashier's checks. Like you deposit cashier's checks, and they're like, oh, I got to hold that for 3 days. And it's like, this check is issued by your freaking bank. You know, like, what? Who are you not trusting in this transaction?
Well, I wrote down here in my notes, I said, show me a centralized ledger and I'll show you a financial weapon that will one day be used against you.
Yes,
Right?
totally.
So you think about any centralized, I mean, let's expand that. Centralized fuel, centralized food, centralized medical care,
Yep.
centralized finance, crypto. I mean, really, it's voluntary, decentralized, free market systems. That's the answer, and that's what this show is all about. What do you say, Mike?
Well, exactly, and this brings us back to LocalMonero.
Mm-hmm.
So that it is a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange, but it's not efficient yet. You know, you could pay a 9 or 10% premium, or way more if you don't want to show
more.
KYC.
Yeah.
You could pay 25% premium
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to show KYC. But it's no fault of Monero. It's the fault of the fiat currency banking system that doesn't have permanency in their own transactions. That's the issue.
That's the issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just another failure of the dollar, not a failure of Monero.
Right.
Or even the local Monero platform. It's not their fault that there are scammers who will send money, fiat money, and then they'll take it back.
Yeah.
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 We used to call that, I can say this, I'm part American, Native American Indian. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. But
Yeah,
I do now.
I am.
Good.
So the rule is if you are part something, you can use an idiom without being accused of being, racist or something.
Okay.
Right?
Go
but so
for it.
I'm part American Indian, and there used to be a term, not that we're advocating the use of this, called blank giving, which means to give something and take it back. You've heard that term, right?
Yeah, I've never understood it, why it would be blank giving, but
But right. But it was a derogatory phrase to say that Native American Indians couldn't be trusted in their trades. That's what that phrase means.
Okay. Interesting.
Blank giving. Well, guess who's blank giving? It's the fiat currency banking system.
Right.
They're the ones that can't be trusted, and that's the white man, not the Indians, by the way. Just saying. That's J.P. Morgan. That's Jamie Dimon.
Yeah.
It's like as white can get. So
I self-identify as a white man.
Do you?
Who has a friend who's part Native American.
I'm part Native American. I'm actually Afro-Irish Native American. If you're technically speaking, that is true. So, given that situation, doesn't this highlight just the advantage of getting into crypto? Because once you're in the world of crypto, your transactions count.
Man, I was thinking about that as I was listening to these, and I'm like, I got in at, I think, just the right time before it started getting really, really hard with this Operation Choke Point and the war on crypto and such. And I am just crossing my fingers and every other appendage I can think of to be able to have somebody who wins the next election who is friendly to crypto and doesn't look at it as the enemy. And I know that you interviewed RFK Jr., right?
Yes.
He seems to be pretty friendly to crypto.
And I also interviewed the spokesperson for Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yes, that was great.
Yes, and I think we're going to get Vivek on an interview later in the year, by the way.
That is huge.
On the show.
He's impressive, man.
Yeah, very impressive guy.
I never heard of him, but I know of him now, and I'm like, okay. I think I can get behind that.
But this is what's cool. So we have a Democrat and a Republican who are both pro-crypto.
Right. Yeah.
And we interviewed Jonathan Emord, who's a Republican running for the Senate. And he says if he gets into the Senate, he will, quote, vigorously defend your right to self-custody for your wallets, your crypto, your coins.
Now, everybody, if you're watching this now, Jonathan's interview has already been up.
Yeah.
It will be our second one. And please, please, please watch that with a notepad. Have your notepad out.
Yeah.
That guy drops more wisdom and knowledge than I've heard from anyone in a long time.
Oh, he's sharp.
Just like, it's just like, these people are so bright. It's like unconscious competence. It's just like how does he do that? I had joked on there that I've been covering crypto for almost 3 years, and he just spits out 2 sentences that summarizes everything that would take me a whole live stream to get across.
He's one of the most brilliant guys that I've ever known. I've known him for over a decade, and he's brilliant.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
As an attorney, his legal practice. But anyway, and this show is not about politics per se, folks. For those of you watching, but we do need to support candidates that are pro decentralized money. Yeah. Like clearly. Now, Biden is anti-crypto. A lot of Democrats are anti-crypto, Elizabeth Warren and so on. But then RFK Jr. is very much pro-crypto. Now, on the Republican side, we talked about Vivek. He's pro-crypto. Trump, I think he's open to crypto, but I don't get the impression that Trump is really steeped in it. And not that he probably doesn't really use it or I don't think he's got his own wallet and his own seed phrase hanging out anywhere. But the Republican establishment might be anti-crypto, kind of like the Democrat establishment, right?
Yeah.
So this is really about the establishment versus the outsiders.
Almost like centralization versus decentralization.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Right. So whatever party our viewers support or whoever they vote for, make sure you include this as a factor. Like, are you going to have control over your money, your digital money, moving forward as the CBDCs are rolled out? Or if the government continues its assault on the crypto space, you could be a digital slave to the CBDC wallet system, the surveillance system.
Well, and think about that. So your fiat ultimately is going to become digital one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's either going to go into cryptocurrency. So let's call that a bucket, cryptocurrency, of which you can, spin that or take your fiat to be able to buy like Bitcoin, let's say, to be able to convert into private money, be it Monero, Epic Cash, Firo. And once you're there, then you're outside of the bankster system, if you will. But if you don't, and you just go along to get along, your cryptocurrency is going to be a central bank digital currency. And what is that going to mean? That's going to mean the money that you think you have is not your money. You need permission to be able to spend it. And it is going to be the ultimate form of control. And it is going to be the gateway to the social credit scores that are out there.
Right.
And you better be marching to the centralized bosses above to their lockstep, getting all of the proper medical treatment out there. And enjoy then, I think you talked about it, discriminatory pricing, Mike. That was a really good part of the interview. Can you unpack what discriminatory pricing is?
Well, I think you're referring to the fact that if the blockchain is transparent, then if you're a company trying to purchase products or supplies, let's say from up-chain suppliers, if they can see your previous crypto transactions, such as on Bitcoin, then they may give you higher prices if you have more money in your Bitcoin wallet, or if you engage in more transactions. They can also see what you paid other suppliers, right?
Indeed.
So your right to privacy, it's not because you're doing anything wrong or illegal. It's your right to negotiate in business. It's your right to not have to tell your coworkers what your salary is.
Correct.
Or it's your right to even protect your business secrets. Let's say that you're let's say you're Lockheed Martin and you got to buy 10,000 parts to build the next missile. And if somebody can just track your 10,000 purchases, then they can reverse engineer all your supply chain. I mean, think about that. So,
I know. Yeah,
the transactional privacy is critical for a functioning economy. And that's why I'm such a fan of privacy coins, because frankly, that's all I'm ever going to use to buy things. I'll use Bitcoin to get into privacy coins, but I'm not going to go out there and buy stuff with Bitcoin because it's not private, period.
Are we prepared to talk about Seraphis and and kind of the breaking news that you received?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point that Alex shared with us. Yeah, it's called the full membership proofs.
Yeah, I think maybe let's go discuss that a
Okay,
little
sure.
bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's interesting.
Well, so from what I know, this is currently in the theoretical stage. And I saw Ruben from Firo talking with some of the Monero people about this. It seems like, actually, it seems like Firo might implement this first.
Okay.
And we're going to interview Ruben coming up. So
Yeah.
that's going to be really cool. And then Monero, seems like Firo and Monero, they share a lot of knowledge and code and libraries and so on, which is great. You know, we like to see this collaboration.
I think their devs are very, very friendly with each other.
Most
A lot
definitely.
of mutual
Yeah.
respect.
Right. So full membership proofs means that instead of the current 16 ring signatures that characterize Monero transactions, the anonymity set for every transaction would be expanded beyond 16, and it could include, frankly, every transaction on the entire blockchain, which would be millions. So we're not talking about some small incremental shift in the anonymity set, like going from 16 to 64. We're talking about going from 16 to millions.
I mean, and let's face it, that would be veritably future-proofed. I mean, there's not going to be anything that's going to reverse engineer those transactions.
Well, I mean, actually, hold on. We don't know yet. I mean, just remember, this is in the theoretical stage, right? So you can mathematically outline your concept, and you can create, your mathematical model for how this is going to work.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's bulletproof yet.
Okay.
Right? Because some other math person, maybe hired by the IRS, for example, can come in and they can hammer at it, and they can find vulnerabilities. And this has happened to every project.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yep.
Vulnerabilities, including on Monero, bugs or vulnerabilities have been found. And there have been some anticipated upgrades that were abandoned after 6 months of pounding on it, finding out, well, guess what? It's actually not going to work the way we think.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you're living proof of that. Your own tipping system that you were trying to build, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
For what, a year or something, and then
it was more than that.
Found something better.
Years. We tried to build a fiat currency tipping system on our platform, Brighteon.com, and we spent easily, I mean, I don't even want to say, it was 6 figures for sure.
Okay.
Many 6 figures. And I ended up trashing the whole thing because crypto just worked better. And I didn't want to be the custodian of other people's money. If they were tipping each other, I didn't want to have my company hold that money and then have to pay out to those people and then effectively work for the IRS by demanding their W-9
What a nightmare.
forms and like, oh, you got to get your tax forms and then report that to the IRS. Like, screw that, man. I'm not working for the IRS. So I trashed the whole thing. And we just put in a privacy crypto tipping system, which currently supports Monero and Epic Cash. And we're going to add Firo, obviously, at some point as well, and some other coins. And that's that. That's what we built.
Yeah, perfect. And probably a good time to be able to tell people, because you did just implement Epic Cash. Epic Cash is unique in that both wallets need to be open within a certain period of time for the transaction to go through. So
true, the sending and receiving wallets,
yeah. So you are going to, like, if I tipped Jam, who is one of your he has videos on your platform. If I tipped him 1 Epic, let's say, you are informing your content providers to make sure they open their wallets like once a day or something, right?
Yes. We have that in our announcement, and it's on the dashboard screen now.
Great.
To tell people to open their wallet once a day. Yeah. And this is a characteristic, for those listening, this is a characteristic of the Mimblewimble blockchain structure, which has many advantages, but the one disadvantage is that the wallets have to handshake in order to complete a transaction. So it's not like with Bitcoin or even Monero, where you just kind of push a transaction to the blockchain And then later on, at any time, the receiving wallet can just scan and claim, pick up that transaction, basically. I'm simplifying it. But with Mimblewimble, the wallets have to talk to each other.
They do.
So,
It's a ping. So sender ping, then you get a pong back, and then you have to ping back, and it goes to the blockchain. And that process, one benefit is that you can never lose your coins. You can't send to if you sent to a wrong address and was like, oh no, you can cancel the transaction.
Yeah, that's true. Right. That's the advantage is you can cancel it if it doesn't go through. And there's almost zero chance of sending coins out into nowhere where they're lost.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So there are
and there's no transaction with Mimblewimble. There's no transaction information at all. So it isn't even like that we would need 16 rings or 100,000 rings or the total transactions on the blockchain. There's just nothing to find. If somebody cracked it in the future, they would just open it up and they'd see an empty box.
Yeah, true. We should do an episode where we talk about the different types of blockchains, like
Perfect.
Bitcoin, and then there's the Monero category, and then there's the Mimblewimble category, and then there's the ZK Snarks, I think, type of approach, which is distinct from Monero. But it gets pretty technical pretty quick, these discussions, right? Like, you and I have had discussions about the UTXOs, the unspent transactions. And like with Mimblewimble, if I have a UTXO of, let's say, 10 coins, but I want to send one coin to somebody else, it's going to lock up 9 coins until that one is confirmed. And then the change is made and the 9 coins come back to be spendable in my wallet. Well, if that receiving wallet never picks up that one, and if I never cancel that transaction, then that entire 10 coin UTXO is not really usable.
Right.
So you got to cancel it. And anyway, there are some subtleties that users need to know, like how to, there's a level of literacy of the different types of blockchains that you're using that's required for users to know, how to cancel transactions or when you need to, or what is a UTXO,
Exactly.
That's a whole show, I think.
I think so too. And I like this quote. Crypto is really, really hard. ... until it's not. It is just something that you have to dive into the shallow end head first and just do it.
Head first? That
Absolutely
sounds like an emergency responder call right there.
That's what most of us do, but along the way, just keep it simple, keep it small, right? When you're first getting in, you just want to use really, really small amounts to be able to just, figure it out.
Yeah.
But once you figure it out, it becomes a little bit of second nature. Look, I remember Web 1.0 when the internet first launched. It was really, really difficult to navigate your way around the web.
True.
And now we do it. We don't even think about it. So the future of private crypto is going to be, it's going to be great.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because even with these communities like with Epic or Monero, I mean, there's no boss. It's a volunteer community. And so that means that on development work that needs to be done, ultimately it needs to be the community that steps up to be able to provide some funding.
Right.
And that's just how it is. So it tends to take a little bit longer and be way more organic, but there are positive qualities to that too. I'm telling you, it's like the communities are just really, really tight.
Yeah,
I think.
I completely agree. And that's one of the things I love about what we're doing here, because we have met some incredible people already.
Yes.
And many more yet to come. And yeah, there are some scammers out there. And if you go onto LocalMonero and you're selling coins, watch out for scammer buyers. Yeah. Right? That's the thing to watch out for. But so you got to be smart about it. You got to have some street smarts, but there are some amazing people along the way. But Todd, let's, is there anything else in your notes that we haven't covered for this episode?
Let me take well, I was just interested in, well, it's in test phase, but this full chain membership proofs, that is going to increase the size of the blockchain. So I don't know, it's kind of like you're giving up being able to make the transactions realistically usable at some point in time, don't you think? To where, I mean, if ultimately transactions take forever, I think you're swimming upstream.
Well, wait. Well, hold on a second. I don't think it's not going to
Do I have
increase
that
the
wrong?
transaction time, but it does increase the total number of bytes per transaction. So, but the number of
But-
bytes in a transaction, it's just a couple of kilobytes.
Okay, so well, I always understood as blockchains, any blockchain bloats, right? And gets bigger.
Yeah.
It is just going to take longer for the transactions to go through. I may have that wrong.
Well, here's what
But-
I would say. Number one, it will take
Yeah.
longer to sync the blockchain
Okay.
because there's more data to download. But frankly, the Monero blockchain is so much smaller than the Bitcoin blockchain at the moment. And of course, like the Epic blockchain is a lot smaller, and so are the other privacy coins.
Yeah.
I've complained before about Monero blockchain size just syncing and setting up new computers because
Yeah.
I install a Monero wallet on basically every system I set up just as a matter of course because
Yeah.
I just want to run nodes and help create more resiliency for the whole system. But the syncing time has been a bit long.
Okay.
But this change of full membership proofs, it will increase the transaction size to a couple of kilobytes per transaction. But the trade-off in terms of privacy is so good
Yes.
that I think it's worth it. And you have to think about, moving forward in time, that bandwidth gets faster, storage gets way cheaper, and even mobile devices become more computationally capable and efficient with their processors.
Good point.
And like you can buy a terabyte, non-volatile memory module right now for $35.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's a terabyte. Yeah, for $35. So, you're not gonna have a blockchain on Monero that's gonna balloon to a terabyte. It might
Right.
be a couple hundred gigs at some point. I don't know what it is right now, but
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's like 450 gigs.
gigs, yeah. So even Bitcoin's not a
Even
terabyte yet.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, I think that what's actually more important to consider, in my view, is you've got the blockchain time. How like some projects have a 1 minute
Right.
per block,
Yeah.
right? And others might have 5 minutes per block. But when you're dealing with privacy coins, you have to think about how long does it take mobile devices to do the math for whatever algorithms are required for zero knowledge proofs. And can they do that math within a minute? You see what I mean? Because blocks, if they're 1 minute each, they're coming at you fast. Like here's a new block, here's a new block, here's a new block.
Yeah.
And if your mobile phone, let's say, if you don't have a strong processor on it, or let's say you're running a wallet on it like Stack Wallet, well, Stack Wallet has to run the zero knowledge proofs in order to claim your transactions on the blockchain, and it keeps getting new blocks, right?
Yes.
So the complexity of the encryption algorithms in the zero knowledge proofs has to be balanced with block times. So that you're not just burning up your phone all day long using your battery to run a bunch of math to keep up with the blocks, right?
Right.
So that's an issue.
Yeah.
And that's where
See,
fine tuning is critical.
Yeah. This is what I love is here I've been covering crypto for almost 3 years, and I'm learning every episode from you. You're really smart, Mike. You figure this stuff out so fast.
Man, I'm just listening to the other experts. I mean, I started out listening to you on Epic, and I've been absorbing, lots of interviews and videos from other people. But yeah, no one's ever called me a low IQ person, that's for sure. But nevertheless, there's really not that many approaches to blockchains out there.
Right.
There's only like 4 or 5 basic types. Mimblewimble being one of them. And they all have the same challenges, block
Right.
size, transaction speed,
Yes.
complexity of the algorithms, and so on. And so it's really a question of how do you come to the right combination of these things?
Yeah, with I think you have to put right at the top of the list, fungibility.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, that's at the top of my list, which
Mhm.
and privacy and fungibility are hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
If you
Right.
have privacy in the coin, you have fungibility. If you don't have privacy in the coin, then you have to work hard to create, shades of fungibility, like
Yeah.
Bitcoin whirlpools and samurai wallets and things like that.
I tell you, BT's history is BTC's Achilles heel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
We've reached out to some people to try to invite them on the show who are into Bitcoin whirlpools and things like that, coin joins,
Okay.
we want to talk to some people about,
Yeah.
are there solutions? Is there a way to make Bitcoin more private? I mean, I know the answer is yes, but it's incredibly cumbersome and time consuming right now because
Yeah.
you have to spread out. Like if you slice up a UTXO and you try to mix it and whirlpool it over, to make it more fungible, it takes time. If your transactions are
Sure.
too close in temporal proximity, then statistically they can be linked together. So
In doing that with the whirlpool and all of that, is that more expensive too? I mean,
it costs money. Yeah,
Yeah.
you pay for it because there's
That's
all
what I
these
thought.
transactions going back and forth,
Yeah.
and Bitcoin transactions are not cheap right now
Not
to
cheap.
begin with.
Yeah.
Not to mention Ethereum.
Right.
Talk
Oh,
about gas prices.
yes.
So Bitcoin, in my view, needs a privacy solution that has to involve the blockchain itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, there's a lot of resistance to that among the Bitcoin old guard people who don't want to change a thing.
Yep.
And maybe they're right. Maybe Bitcoin's not the right place to try privacy. Maybe, don't mess with it because it's functioning in its own way, but it's not private.
Right. Right. Well, a lot of values being moved on the Bitcoin blockchain, and so it serves that purpose. But for those of us who really want to go to the restroom in a public airport with the door closed instead of open, transparent blockchains they're not for me, Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. If the bathroom door is open, they might spot your bonus hole there. You could have a bonus hole exposure
Ding,
problem.
ding, ding.
Now that's an inside
nailed
joke
it.
of a previous podcast, but I'm not even making that up. That's
You are.
we'll just
You
leave that
are.
one where it is.
That's why you can actually say it out loud, because it happens to be true.
Yeah.
It is. Oh no, we're out of June. Okay, so
No, but the
We're out
bonus
of-
hole persists. It is a permanent bonus hole. Let's not go there for this episode. We promised people we would focus on decentralized solutions.
yeah, let's talk about a sponsor instead.
Oh yeah, we do have a sponsor. I should give them
We do.
credit. I always forget. Thanks for reminding me, Todd. The sponsor of our show here is the satellite phone store, SAT123. Actually, they have another site that might be better. It's called BeReady123.com. BeReady123.com also shows you the solar generators, the energy storage devices with the charge controllers and the inverters, and you can buy solar panels and have a big kit. You can function off grid for quite a while on these devices, and they have the sat phones and the satellite text messaging devices called the Bivy sticks. And you can find out all the details on that at BeReady123.com. And I just want to say, we disclose all of our sponsors here on the show, by the way. And let me just remind people, you can go to our website, decentralized.tv. And if you click on, I think it is about the show, you'll see our code of ethics. So we do not charge guests to appear on our show, and we don't have secret schemes of any kind. Todd and I both disclose if we hold coins of whoever we're interviewing. If we hold those coins, we'll let you know. We're not running pump and dump, rug pull type of schemes of any kind. And even like with LocalMonero, I went out of my way to use LocalMonero. It actually cost me money, Todd, because I was paying these, premium prices for Monero to use their system. I think I paid $184 per coin, which was quite a markup.
And it's what, 140 or
No, it's like
something now?
160, I think, right?
160,
something in
okay.
that range. But yeah, I paid a premium, just because I wanted to learn this system. And I also got rejected by some of the users there.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, well, because I said, look, I want to do a trade with you, but I don't want to send you my ID because, I'm the host of this show. I told them who I was and the show. And I said, I don't want to send you my ID. I don't want that getting out all over the place. And they're like, no ID, no trade. Okay, well, it's up to them. Up to them.
Well, they're probably smart because you could be an imposter. I mean, seriously, it's like.
Well, but I offered to get on like a Skype with them.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I'll do a Skype video. I'll talk to you. You can see.
Right.
It's not me. I mean, it is me. It's not like a deep fake. Yeah, no, it's not that. But they weren't interested in that. So, but hey, the seller gets to decide their terms. So you got to respect that.
Right, you do.
Their terms
I'm curious. Are there a lot of sellers on there? I mean, is there much volume going through there?
Not as much as I would like to see. I mean,
like, is there anybody that's offering, like, if you want to buy 10,000 Monero, or
or $10,000 worth?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people that'll sell you 10 grand or 20 grand worth of coins. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They probably want KYC.
Right.
Because they're not going to take that risk without, getting your driver's license or something. But I hope that LocalMonero actually gets more users buying and selling. The platform only collects a 1% fee. I don't have any problem with the 1%. That's no problem.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But I would like to see more users.
I believe all the sellers, they have at least a 5% markup, don't they? Or
well, it depends. It depends on the method of payment. So if you send cash in the mail, it's not much of a markup.
Oh, okay.
Or if you do cryptocurrency swaps, is not much markup.
Okay.
But anything involving fiat, like we talked about, that could possibly be reversed, you could pay 10% more easily or more. I've seen, like right now, Monero is $160 something. Today, if you go to LocalMonero, there are listings there that will sell you Monero for $300 a coin, no questions asked. Like double price, essentially.
Why would anyone?
I don't know. I don't know who would pay double for Monero?
Who buys that? I don't know.
I don't know. There are others that are like 50% markup. Some
you think
questions.
there are people that set those prices when the price was a lot higher, and then they just
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, look, it's a dynamic marketplace, and I guess for some people who maybe they can't provide any kind of ID, that they would be forced to pay a premium to get Monero. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like they could just use cash in the mail.
Exactly.
You get a much better deal.
Right.
So I don't know.
There's our hint from Heloise.
What's that?
Cash through the. Well, there used to be a newspaper article. Hints from Heloise. Heloise
really?
Gave
okay.
Advice. I'm old. I remember this stuff.
No, you're not. You're not that old. Come on. I remember newspapers too. We use them. Clean up the dog pee or whatever. The only thing good about newspapers was the Sunday comics.
The comics.
Yeah, that's the only thing good. But anyway, bottom line is, okay, we are thumbs up on LocalMonero, right?
Yes.
Platform.
Thumbs up on Alex.
Yeah, Alex is cool. He seems to know his stuff. He's built, or whoever he's working with, they've built a pretty cool platform. It's got a pretty good security system in place. If you're buying Monero, I don't think you're going to get screwed. If you're selling Monero, you got to watch out so that you don't get screwed by some unscrupulous buyer. I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, but use it at your own risk. Know what you're doing. Read the instructions. Like, don't send money until the seller has accepted the trade, because until the seller posts the bond, if you send the
Yes.
money first and they haven't posted the bond, and then they can cancel the whole thing, and then boom, you're toast.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Caveat emptor.
I did that. I did that once, but the seller was honest and he didn't steal my money.
That's good.
Yeah, but that was only a $200 trade, so
Didn't steal your money.
he
like
didn't steal my
crap.
$200. But
Like-
if he had stolen my $200, I was like, go party, dude. You know, go have fun.
Yeah,
Just
enjoy
consider
your-
it an Independence Day gift or whatever.
up your bonus hole.
We could call that the bonus hole bonus.
Yeah,
Like a free
that's right.
$200. Like, yay! If somebody, you know, ripped me off for $200, I would just be like, you know, dude, have fun. You know, pay it forward. Give it to somebody. All right. So anyway, that's today's episode. Then, unless you have anything else to add, Todd.
No, this was excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That's it.
All right.
All right. Good discussion. A lot of topics here today. So hope you enjoyed this episode of Decentralized TV. Be sure to go to the website, decentralized.tv, and sign up for the email list to be alerted in advance of the next guest we're having on. And we're going to move to a format where we publish 2 episodes a week, one on Mondays and one on Wednesdays, you know, barring holidays and such. But Mondays and Wednesdays. So 2 episodes a week is what we're going to be doing. Check out the website for new episodes. We also post on Rumble, and you can share the Rumble link on platforms that are currently banning Brighteon.com links, which is another lawsuit, by the way, against YouTube and Apple and Facebook and whoever. But go ahead and share the episode, and feel free to repost it on other platforms as well. And remember, our slogan here at this show is, we are building the infrastructure for human freedom. I hope you learned a lot today. I know that I did in exploring LocalMonero, and from Alex and Todd, I know you learned a lot too. And thanks for being on with me, Todd. This has been a lot of fun.
Always my pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
All right. You too. Take care. And folks, be sure to join us on the next episode on decentralized.tv. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.